My name is Larissa Dickey, and I am originally from Tennessee, from the US. I grew up on a farm. My parents grew tobacco, and so I have a childhood history of being in the woods and in the country, and that's my soul is sort of formed by the landscape of trees and woods and people farming. And I live in Berlin now, sort of a long way from home, a little bit, like many people. And yeah, it's a little bit about myself. I studied, have a Master's of Fine Arts in Poetry from the University of Minnesota, and so I spent 8 long winters in Minnesota to get that degree. Well, no, not to get the degree, but 3 years of that was the degree. And then came to Berlin. So it's a little bit about myself. I've been writing poetry since I was about 10 or 11. That was really terrible writing when I first started. But I was really obsessed with Emily Dickinson, the poet Emily Dickinson, so I tried to write like her. And I also grew up as a dancer, taking ballet for 10 years, and so I've danced for most of my life. So I'm interested in several different kinds of art. Yeah.
And talking specifically about the writing that you do, how would you describe it?
The writing?
Yeah.
Oh, it's a very good question. I think that my writing is trying to explore perception. I'm not really trying to tell a story. I'm not really necessarily always trying to convey an emotion, but I am trying to sort of piece together a lot of different information. Things I heard, things I overheard, things I feel, things I think, and making them into some sort of something that moves across the page. So I write a lot about I write a lot about home, but not in you wouldn't necessarily find biographical information in there. I'm really interested in sound and in image, so I work a lot from sort of the energy of a line, or how things sound together in a line. And lately I've been working on longer poems. I sort of went from like a 1 poem per page thing to writing these sort of longer, more spacious sequences of poems in an effort to kind of reflect a thought or a belief that that not everything is clear, and that poetry for me is less about nailing it down, saying I figured this out and this is the nice, neat thing, but somehow I'm more resonant with this longer, more spacious work. And some of that is influenced by an American poet named Fanny Howe, who wrote a beautiful essay called Bewilderment, and she sort of asserts that this state of being bewildered, being in wonder about the world, being often maybe confused or not being a hero all the time, is something that I find really compelling and try to emulate or try to move toward in my work. How can what I'm writing sort of convey a consciousness of wonder, or of beauty and of silence as well.
And how many books have you published so far?
Well, today Miel Press has published 2 chapbooks, so they're sort of, I think in the UK they call them pamphlets, so I have 2 pamphlets and a few various other poems and journals, mostly in the US, but so I have 2 chapbooks, and I'm sending my work around, also hoping to get a longer book published, but that hasn't happened yet. But I have a few that I have actually 2 or 3 manuscripts that I'm trying to get published now as well.
Who would you say is your target audience?
Oh, this is a good question. This is very hard because in some ways I have a few close colleagues who have influenced me a lot in their own writing, and sometimes these people are the people I'm thinking about when I'm writing. But I'm also thinking about my parents and my brother and people who I grew up with, and I'm not really necessarily trying to think they're my perfect audience, because I think often they might not understand it because it's not a story, or it's not what fits for them in terms of what a poem is or what they think a poem would be. But I often find myself putting in things that they would recognize, like phrases or words that might be kind of quite colloquial in the South, or we grew up knowing them, just in a way to sort of say, I see you, or I want you to feel a part of this too, even though what I'm creating they might not be a perfect audience for. So I also think I write a little bit for people that are interested in movement, because of the dance influence in my life. I am always thinking about how words are moving on a page, or how ideas are moving on a page too. So, but it's a very good question. I think I am still finding out who is my audience, who would enjoy these things. Yeah.
Do you write every day?
Yes, in some form every day. Yes, not always good.
How would you describe the process itself?
Well, I've been traveling a lot in the last 2 years, so my process is that I have these notebooks that I kind of carry around with me everywhere, and they're pretty mobile, and I can just throw it wherever I am in a bag, and I make a lot of notes. I'm between what I'm reading, making notes, copying down passages, or making notes of ideas that I have, and so I keep that kind of with me. And I would say every few months or so, I kind of make myself sit down and download all that. I mean, to sort of use a computer metaphor, take all that information and I get in front of my computer, and then I go back and say, what are the ideas? Are there things that are clustering together? Are there things that want to be together? And so I work from that notebook, and then actually would take phrases and make a poem in the computer that way. It's kind of how I've been working for the past few years, and that's worked okay. I really love writing in longhand. I don't write a whole poem in longhand, but I make lots of notes, and lots of lines come from what I've written with my hand, and then I make it on the computer. Yeah.
As a writer, where do you see yourself going?
That's a good question. I really, for me, what I love is when in traveling. I love meeting other writers or other artists, and I love talking about process. Actually, I love sort of hearing about why people do what they do, why people are making what they're making, and. So I would actually love to live a life where I'm meeting people like this and talking about their work and about my work, and in an unfolding kind of a way, in a surprise, like as a journey. I was in India a few years ago and was staying at a place where the owner was actually also a writer, and he was very quiet, kind of gentleman, and one day I'd heard he was a writer, and I just sort of sat down next to him at the table, and we ended up talking for an hour just about what it is to be to deeply feel things in the world and to try to express that on paper. And that's to me is I would love to have more of that. That's my favorite part, I think. I mean, obviously I'd love to have books published, and collaboration is something that's very important to me. So I like to see that. I would like it to be a base for building community, I think.